How are your rating systems well in USGBC incentivizing using reclaimed materials? For example, reclaimed lumber has clear improvements on health impacts, circularity impacts, and climate impacts. Wes?
Want me to go first? Yeah.
Rodolfo?
We have a whole credit on building and material reuse with lots of points available for building reuse. And on the product side, the BPSP credit I just shared, one of the lines on there was a reused material and its scores of 5, a maximum of 5 if you're reusing materials. You have to be careful. Some reused materials have things that we don't want to put back in the building. So those have to be taken care of. But reuse is one of those, it's secret sauces, right? If you can do reuse, you're going to cut down on body carbon. You're generally going to be better for health and all the other things, circularity, obviously.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of having an HPD for reused materials. But wood is a different kit because they're great. It's like, you know what's there, so you know how you can repurpose it. But even this is helpful. It has a lot of co-benefits. We don't currently have a path for use as a lead has, but you can definitely use it. You can also submit innovations if you have because we agree that it has an impact. And if you cannot create regrettable impacts, we're always welcome to recognize and achieve innovation plans.
Rodolfo, that's one of the main points about why transparency is important. We don't know in many cases what the future holds. But if that information is there, as we were talking about the product examples, where it's stamped right on the product itself, as the example I gave from the podcast when the host asked me if we had these material health disclosures like HPDs for all the things that are in there, wouldn't we then know what's in there? And the answer is yes. That proactivity has been supported in both LEED and WELL. Even if you don't know how to use the information, it's important first step. It's a foundation to have it. We've heard so many great illustrations in our ecosystem partner platforms of how they are advancing the ability to use this complex information in a much more streamlined, simplified, and comprehensive way. This issue of circularity really does highlight why that needs to be a foundation, no matter what, on any product and any project. So then we're at least in a position to take action when the time comes, even if we didn't know it would. Any other comments on circularity, reclaimed materials, or any other topic before we plunge into our panel discussion?
Barbara, I'll put you on the spot just because I kind of answered my own question, but I'd like to hear what your thought is. How is BBB similar to BPSP? How is the basic, better, best similar to LEED's building product selection procurement? Similar or different?
Well, to be completely honest, I haven't looked at the details of the BPSD, so I couldn't say, but I know because we are working so hard at getting this thing out the door. But just knowing the brain trust that's part of the collaborative and how we are collaborating with a whole bunch of other partners, I'm sure we will be intentional about that alignment for sure. I haven't been.
I think that's a great answer because I was going to say the same thing. Somebody asked me, like, well, we haven't done the crosswalk yet, but you and I know, and the whole team know we're going to. So that's on tap for the next 3 to 4 months.
We're going to chime in on that.
Yeah.
A simple tool we could use is the LEED pre-check and the BBB all at the same time. And we'd start to get some insights into where these are the same or different.
Yeah, actually, that does give me a better answer now that I'm thinking of it, because what we built, our benchmark builder, the tool behind BB and a few other programs that I can't mention publicly yet, would be the same as all the rating system automated pre-checks. So it all goes to the same source of truth, and it will be very easy for us to automate that crosswalk and check across multiple things at once. The product data that we get from manufacturers all has a happy coexistence together and can be filtered easily.
Yeah, you can see the differences and similarities. So, Terry.
Had the pleasure of observing that presentation last week at the Managed Materials Summit. Given that I know more about the LEED V5 credit, it strikes me that the basic, better, best is really looking a lot at the chemical level. It's a very strongly material health focused initiative. And the LEED v5 credit is relying on certification types and the verification of those certifications to contribute to the credit. So I think that, you know, the basic, better, best is really created by material health experts who really are looking at the actual health of these, you know, ingredients that go into products. And so I think there's a relationship depending upon the project team's goals for the project. That's my
Yeah,
take on it.
some people and those involved with that initiatives certainly are ones that have been wanting to do this work and have had prior runs at it with other platforms. We all remember those early attempts. And so I think that does make sense to me. Terry, it illustrates a point made by everybody here. Different projects are going to approach this in different ways, depending on the needs of those projects, the needs of those owners, the needs of that situation. It's highly unlikely, I think, that any one of these is going to be the answer singular at this, still, in my opinion, very early state of learning how to work with all of this. Terry, you did a good job explaining where we're at in this journey with this complex subject about which people have different opinions that are all defensible. I don't know if there's a point in the future where all of it will be boiled down to, I remember meeting with someone at USGBC a number of years ago who, when remarking about this particular area, and I've shared this with Wes before, said, the problem with this is it's so complicated. And what we really want is a single indicator. And I looked at this person and I said, it's complicated because it's complicated, not because we're complicating it. Actually, what we're all trying to do is simplify something that's complicated. And many of you have seen me hold up something from our shared experience of today, but certainly relates to my past experience in the tech industry. This is a really complicated device. And making it be simple to do complicated things has taken many billions of dollars of investment. And that's why I wanted to present what Bill did this morning, because we have to think at that bigger level, think how we do that. I think we're doing amazing work to simplify the use of and get traction with what we have. So I want to take a moment and just draw to an end the presentation and thank all of our presenters for presenting. We're going to move right into our ecosystem panel discussion. I asked the presenters to think about two questions. What are our biggest challenges as we look ahead to the coming year, and what are our biggest opportunities? I'd like to spend the next amount of time exploring these questions and getting various thoughts about it. We're going to invite our audience to throw in your perspectives and questions as we go along. And I thought if we can remember this, I will turn off the sharing and then we can just have us. I know Wes sadly had to move on to something else, but I appreciate the rest of you staying with us. Again, we invite our audience to ask your own questions. I will invite anybody on our panel to kick off the discussion.
Interesting to come being on their side of the world, 5,000-6,000 miles south of the US now, and see similar things. Challenge is being overwhelmed with data or information, like all too many things. So honestly, lack of immediacy and the way that we need to do so many things at once, it can be disheartening. However, it's a huge opportunity is in the collaborations. I think it's an industry we're coalescing. It was very warming to hear the same conversations we're having here, see live in Argentina at the moment, feeling of, okay, we're coalescing about the language, about like, we cannot do this alone. We need to grow the movement, collaborating, do different things, yet both important. I think it gives the biggest opportunity to actually streamline many things, to be able to talk about the same things from multiple angles, yet knowingly talking about the same thing. When we talk about material health, the discussion we had just had before, certificates versus metrics, versus attributes of a certification of a material. I see a lot of opportunity that can help us cope with the feeling of overwhelming feeling that things might go wrong. This has been something that's coming up more and more.
Yeah, building on what you're saying, I feel, Wendy, like the challenge and opportunity are two sides of the same coin, answering one without the other. But yeah, things are very overwhelming. I see the challenges, two challenges float to the top for me. One with my Sustainable Performance Institute hat on that does all the change management work, as Wendy and I both share a passion for that, with all these companies, the culture of the cultures and the siloed nature within firms, within different kinds of companies, getting people to collaborate effectively within companies and across companies. Integrated design practice is still elusive, and technology is part of solving that, but it's not the complete solution. We need to focus from a culture standpoint on how are we collaborating effectively? And honestly, if we're asking the question and leaving it there, we're doing nothing. Do you measure your collaboration effectiveness as a team? Because software companies do, the big ones. Other companies measure that. So what are those metrics? Like to know so you can continuously improve and that your collaboration is actually leading to the right outcome. The next big challenge facing us this year, and we'll all talk to that, is data. And the fact that data is a shit show, pardon my French, but Mindful Materials just published the ecosystem data ecosystem report. I encourage everyone to take a look at that because 30 years in the business, I have never seen anything pulled together that reflects back to all of us so we understand how hard this is for all of us. Manufacturers don't all have systems to manage their data. If they do, sometimes they don't even know who owns what parts. Data is an ongoing struggle, but those things are also opportunities. I know we look at them that way, but I'll stop it there and we'll come back to opportunities.
I'll jump in with really quickly. I like to look at these opportunities and always consider the problem at different scales. What's exciting to me, number one, is the common materials framework that Mindful Materials is working on. Everybody here is a part of it. That notion of reducing that complexity of everybody asking the same question a slightly different way and everybody collecting the answers a slightly different way. You know, that common baseline that we can all reference is a huge, huge step in both our interactions as the people at the table who are at the leading edge, but also in broadening adoption. I'm also very excited about a lot of the new materials entering the market. There is some really cool stuff in biogenic materials hitting the market. Mycelium is a hot word right now, but it's going from concept 10 years ago to purchasable products now. I find that really exciting to see that coming to fruition, the ecosystem.
I think I can throw in something that was not mentioned, but we are very involved in. As a program operator, several years ago, I co-led the American Center for Life Cycle Assessment, the development of an open standard for developing product category rules in the effort to create more reliable and more accurate environmental product declarations. The data coming out of EPDs can be activated in digital tools and whole building LCA and comparisons, you know, real meaningful data to be able to make comparative as well as procurement decisions. And so what's exciting looking, although exciting wasn't one of the questions, but big opportunities was with the demolition of the EPA and the low embodied carbon labeling program, it's created this diaspora of people and knowledge into other parts of the ecosystems. Allison Kin-Bennett, who was heading that program at the EPA, is now leading the ACLCA PCR Open Standard version 2 working group. So thankfully, I'm not doing that. And so, and the beauty of it is that the working group had already decided to take the additional criteria identified by the EPA for the low carbon labeling program and roll that into the ACLCA PCR Open Standard. So now we'll have one comprehensive program. It's going to go out for public comment, I think next month. It'll be 30, 60 days of public comment and probably will be published in January. Sustainable Minds is one of 2 program operators who already updated our technical program to be conformant with the open standard. We've published 10 product category rules that are conformant with the open standard and have published many EPDs. So we are really excited to be working from the standards end to drive better harmonization, better data, better reporting to make more accurate decisions. And all of that data ends up in the tools that we're all working on. The real opportunity is for the industry to design and build higher performing, low impact buildings. That's the real opportunity that we're all working on little bits and pieces of to make that happen.
I'm going to chip in something here on this note, because I think one of the things, when we got into doing this work, is very focused on the chemicals other than carbon, right? Of which there are many. We've talked about, we all know the complexity of that. But one of the other complex things that confront both product manufacturers and project teams is, how do I integrate this data? And so I think the CMF is effective in mapping out the different pieces of data, that it's all of this. It's not one of these. That's an important thing for people that are new to this to understand, because typically people encounter one piece. And now I think we have the opportunity to get across the message from the outset. No, it's all of these pieces, and some of them are more actionable today than others. But in particular, bringing together the embodied carbon and the material health information is a very proximate challenge, because those are the 2 areas of data that are digitized for the most part and available and can be worked with. And still people say, well, how do we trade that off? And so we have an interesting project that some of you may have heard about in the state of Washington, where they passed a procurement regulation. And it's the first one that we know about where it calls explicitly. It was started around carbon, and the foundation of that is EPDs, but they recognized that the data about the chemical constituents in EPDs is not material health data in the way that we all understand it. There's a relationship, but it's not the same. And so it calls out asking for also HPDs. This platform being implemented will be the first focused on those 2 pieces and looking at, how do you sort of bridge, how do you bring that information together at a more detailed level? So I think there's a lot to learn, not only by having this CMF that lays out the playing field in a common way, but then we can also start to work on, in some areas that are further along, how do we use these together? What do we do if we have this and that? That's going to be an important opportunity that we can start to work on with the tools at hand now. Rodolfo,
I want to double down on, regarding health-like communities. We talk about equity, how things are made. If we know more about what they are, we know how they're made. If we know how they're made, we have a better idea of who's made it. Are we think of pyramid of controls, are we only rely on PPEs all the way, and whatever happens with the all the byproducts, good luck to whoever lives around, or actually we're substituting, we're removing the hazards. So I do believe, as I forgot to mention earlier, on the power of disclosure to tap in one of the areas that is known, which is the supply chain, because it's hard. So that's a lot of information untapped. Of course, the relationship need to be established, but I think this is an opportunity. We have more data. The problem is, sometimes too much is too much, Do we have better data? We have more organized data. We have a system. We're getting there.
See,
I
you
think.
just, Alpha, we have more organized data. And I think that's going to be crucial. I remember years ago, Barbara, when I first met you in 2005, you were teaching a workshop at the NESI conference, teaching architects that designing green buildings was a different process, that you had to have more people involved up front. I remember thinking, that's just like what happened in the technology industry when people started designing websites. You couldn't just start with the technology people. You had to have everybody involved up front. Finally, I feel like, Barbara, your time has come that more people are working that way. I met a guy when I was learning about green building. He was an early green architect. And he said, green building codes is going to be the way to go, because today, literally, if you designed a code, your building is barely legal. That's literally the definition of code, the lowest threshold people can agree to. And if you build to that, you are barely legal. Designing a green building, the goals are much higher. And I feel like there's already been progress made at getting the requirements for EPDs into some building codes, some regulations, like Cal Green, like what's happening in Washington. I feel like now with more organized data, there's the opportunity to get more influence on codes and standards about materials in general, and not just rely on the rating systems who have done the heavy lifting of trying to drive demand for improved building. It's just taken years to go bottoms up instead of top down. We didn't get what happened in Europe, where regulation was top down. We've all been working bottoms up to make all this stuff happen. But I feel like we're arriving at a point where it's possible, not next year or the year after, but bit by bit, I think ideas will take hold. There will be pilot codes and programs, and people will notice. I think there's some momentum building.
Yeah,
think
I would
that's a
like to
great
add
point.
on the biggest challenge. I think the biggest challenge is still moving to the mainstream. We see very identifiable different usage patterns from the pros who use our tool and the non-pros. I feel like we have some significant penetration given the number of tech vendors. We have gotten the pro segment on board to some tool, and they're not waiting. They're using the tools as is and making progress. So now we got to move to this next segment who are very different. Barbara said the data is a shit show. Data follows one very simple rule: garbage in, garbage out. If it does become a shit show, we're going to lose the mainstream, right? They're not going to wade through the data the same way the early adopters do. I think it's up to all of us. I would love to partner with anybody else who's got these concerns on the data quality. We don't all have to create our own data quality measurement. We should be doing that together. That's how we'll get the mainstream, make the data brainless and something they don't have to think hard about, and meet them where they are. I can tell you guys, I agree. Barbara did a nice job explaining the common material framework. If you take an architect off the street here in San Francisco, I go down to the AIA headquarters and hang out and meet architects all the time and try to explain to them how the AIA buckets translate into the CMF, and their head is just spinning, right? They're not following it. We get into taco and they're like, when's lunch? It's not built for the average person. So the more we can do to make this as brainless as we can for this next segment, and we can all get together and go deep. You guys all know my business partner, Paul, like he'll go as deep as anybody wants to on this information, but we got to somehow bring it up. Someone said it was demolished over at the EPA. Well, the GSA High Performance Building Division was sadly demolished too. I think they were on the right track, because their rating system, the Green Procurement Compilation, started under Obama. Everyone's going to get nostalgic for a minute here, but President Obama started it, and it was a simple yes, no. And the details were intense, right? To get a yes, no. It was meticulously intense. But at the end of the day, the procurement officer had yes, no. They didn't have to learn a framework. They just knew. We're working on that with Canada, another country, trying to lead the charge here. So the more we can think about that average person and meet them where they are, I think we'll all move forward together. And every tool meets different needs. Every project's different. I'm so glad that we are now in a space. For quite a while, it was really just Terry and Paul gutting it out in this area. Right now we have a sector. So thank you for everybody coming in and making this a real sector of technology. I think that's the challenge. Keeping the details real and accurate and high fidelity, but then letting average architect off the street be able to pick up and use it.
Actually,
Yeah.
Kathleen, I'm so glad you said that. I want to echo that because you're right. Paul and I started doing this a long time ago, and you can't have a technology vertical without a bunch of people in it. And you can't have one or two startups just defining a vertical. It's not robust. The fact that there are all these tools now entering the space, and particularly, Andre, with your investors, those guys invest in regular stuff, not green stuff. I mean, they're big money people. They've done a bunch of businesses. They've got a ton of money, and they see the opportunity for what you guys are doing. And that is a real boon to the industry to see some real big money get into the space and put some influence and investment into it.
Investors are seeing the tipping point coming, right? Investors are betting that we're about to move from early adopters to the rest of the market. Yes, that's definitely where we're seeing. We're seeing that both on the financial side and the user side, and it's really exciting.
Yeah, just to follow up on that point, I think that is why we really need to keep our mind on the fact that the participation in any of this is still small. Certainly at the A&D level, it's smaller than it is at the manufacturer level. So we've had the good fortune of thousands of manufacturers participating at this point, feeding data in, because none of this can happen without the data they are feeding in. And that had to be a predicate for any of the rest to happen. Kathleen, you said it so well. When any of us that have studied the Jeffrey Moore Crossing the Chasm know this by heart, that the requirements of people in the majority in the larger group are just very different from what excites and energizes those who come in early. And that's why it's a chasm that's hard to cross. Thinking about that other group that's not participating yet, if we collectively can unlock another 10%, everyone here is going to have a big smile on their face because there's plenty of market available out there. It's up to us to figure out what is the key to unlock that. And once that gets going, we have plenty of data to feed it. I think we could be in for that tornado of opportunity.
We won't run out of work because after carbon and material health, we have the entire labor system to work through, right? Rodolfo, you hinted at it, it's coming, but that's an even bigger data set to unlock and mine for the next 10 years.
Evelyn, there was a question about social sustainability reporting and what is happening with that. We're incorporating some basic, very rigorous reporting into what is available now with our 3 HPDs certifications. Figuring out how to make reporting intelligible was a large project that we did in collaboration with a number of you out there. There's a lot of green field out here for more information.
We're unleashing co-benefits of healthier material selections. We always talk about this, but we can also flip the script a little bit. These are co-benefits.
Well, we have another question. From where I sit, or it's a comment, the challenge is more a consumer behavior one, but not the way you might think. All these discussions are quite lofty and they don't reach the Walmart folks, not meant to be pejorative. Are you only driving demand at the top or at the lowest level up? Of course, you continue with the top down.
I think we've officially moved into opportunity after Wendy's comment and Andre's. I love the Walmart comment. Unlike Sustainable Minds, Ecomedes, BuildingEase has only been around for a couple of years, but we started focusing on the masses. The expert top level builds the standard, and then anyone who doesn't know anything, who doesn't care, automatically complies with the standard that the top level put in. So we built for the masses first. I think we're all moving in that direction. I think that's critical because if we stay at that top for another 20 years, like what's the point? Give up. So the masses is definitely, I think we're all moving in that way. I think The other opportunity I see around data is that people are waking up. Manufacturers want their data digitized. Certification bodies want their data digitized. They're just figuring out, like, what does that mean? They understand it's needed. And, you know, for us, the opportunity moving forward, we had a bunch of manufacturers come to us last year asking for a data solution, democratize data. One of the things we did in the past year was really focus on democratizing data, making, you know, the first to port data out anywhere to everyone, and a two-way exchange for manufacturers so that they don't have to manually update the data of certifications in their own IT system. Instead of just getting the manufacturer's data and making it usable for everyone, a two-way exchange so that the certification data that comes to us like HPDs can go back to the manufacturer so it's current on their site. And I think the opportunity for all of us is that while the data is a mess in its current state, the people who own the data now understand the importance of digitizing it so that it's democratized for the masses and that all of us can use it. So I think that's a huge opportunity for all of us, that people have woken up and understand and are on the same page about the need for it. And now they're just trying to figure out how do they get there internally. And there are a bunch of solutions for that.
And
You
that's
just highlighted a really good point about data awareness and a shift in the market where a couple of years ago, nobody was asking for how to tie their CMF to their API, right? That was not vocabulary you got from vendors or architects. And now those are common requests. And so that awareness of the need for connected data is also moving into the masses.
We have
we're
a
helping a little bit
comment
on-
from
oh, sorry.
we have a comment from Tom Ennis. Would it help if you focused on biggest benefits first? For example, like we talked about, a fire-friendly building material.
That's a great question. We have a partnership with USGBC California for rebuilding LA. So fire is very hot upmost in our mind, as well as tornadoes in St. Louis and hurricanes in Florida. Our Global Buyers Club is one of the things that they're focusing on to, you know, drive down the cost of these fire resistant materials. From a data standpoint, that doesn't help solve the data problem, focusing on one thing like that. And I don't know, other tech people chime in, but from our approach to how we manage data, singling out or emphasizing certain attributes of a product isn't as helpful as making those attributes all usable for people to apply their criteria. And that's one of the things too that we're building in, is it's not just sustainability, but when you're filtering, whether it's basic, better, best, or something else, you care about durability, flame spread, acoustics. All of these attributes contribute to making a decision. And that's what we've structured our data around to collect that stuff. I don't think singling out specific things like fire resistance makes it easier to solve the bigger problem.
I think the storytelling is important. What are you trying to achieve? I think if we can tell the story through a lens of a couple of properties, that's something we can do. Basically, well, what are you trying to achieve? This is a set of products I can to achieve you. And on top of that, you have this much fire resistance. Have you seen this video from UL Research Institute? It's really gory. They put two rooms, one with products that are more plastic-based and one that are more natural products, and they just burn them. And yes, one burns like a bonfire, that one is nothing, and suddenly, boom, explodes. Those are the type of things I say when we talk about fire friendliness. This is what we mean. This is more visual, and I strongly recommend you to look at that video. But that's the things we can help them. What do you basically, when we think of fire friendly, what do you mean with fire friendly?
A good crosswalk. There are so many between biogenic materials and fire. Not to harp on fire all the time, but there are a ton of amazing new biogenic materials. Shout out to one of our newest manufacturers, DuraPanel, which is compressed straw made in Australia for the bush and wildfires there. Like DuraPanel, there are so many biogenic materials that have naturally inherent properties that are better for health, better for fire resistance, better for acoustics. So there is a crosswalk between biogenic materials and these things too, which means these materials have fewer data points you need to track because they have less garbage in them, less toxins, like co-benefits, as I think you mentioned, Rodolfo, or someone else, the idea of the co-benefits embodied within a specific material is an amazing opportunity that's emerging more and more every day this year, which is great.
Cork, for example, evolved to protect trees from forest fires. That's the evolutionary function of the cork on the tree. When we use it, it works great for fire protection, but you can't focus on one area. Our users are consistently saying we have to do a whole building. We don't get to pick and choose one system or another, one layer or another. It's like, give me the product, now give me the glue for the product, now give me the substrate for the product, now give me the structure for the substrate. Our users are doing whole buildings and need data on all the components.
Okay, I'm going to ask each of you for a final comment. Who would like to start?
I can start. When we talk opportunity, I think it has to go back to the profit part. I would like to challenge everybody to think about going beyond. The CEO has a big ethos for green, and so we're going to do green stuff, right? That is temporary. But what is permanent is growth, business growth, profit growth, whether it's a building owner, an architect and design firm, or the manufacturer. If you can tie the sustainable decisions, and I completely agree, it has to be the whole thing. You would be shocked at how many adhesives we have in our system. It's all these little products, but if you can tie it to business value, and I think the key there is the time frame, right? Some of these things like lower energy use is going to pay back very quickly and have you a lower energy bill. Lower water use is going to pay back and give you a lower water bill if you're in the hotel and you have lots of rooms. Less toxic stuff doesn't show up until there's a fire. Those don't have an immediate payback. So you have to lengthen the time frame and show that there is ROI. I loved what they said about the charred wood is that we looked at our own people and they were getting sick. We didn't want them to be indoors burning up wood with smoke. And so there's people in the factory, there's installers, there's the people who live around the factory, right? So if everybody opened up their aperture to all the stakeholders and how things affect them and the timeline of generations, not just the quarterly report, there's tons of ROI. We just have to help people shift their mindset for who and when. This can be a really durable thing. We all know the Unilever story. They were a darling of the sustainability movement. And when the CEO left, it backslid so fast. It's not enough for a CEO to have ethos. There has to be business value. It's something I ask all of our customers and all of our users whenever I get the chance. And I would love it to be a bigger topic of conversation among the top group who are driving the movement.
Yeah, I love that. And it makes me think, this is not what I was going to say, but now I'm inspired by what you just said. I think there has never been a more important time to focus on innovation. And the problem with innovation is everyone thinks they're innovative and every company thinks they innovate. Just like collaboration effectiveness can be measured, innovation at a fundamental level is always challenging the status quo, whether that be your quarterly reports, your profit, your design of your products, always challenging the status quo and always challenging yourself and your ideas. If every company, whether it's a manufacturer, design firm, construction, whoever it is, can look at their entire business and what they think is good, but still approach it with a challenge of how could it be better? What could we do? What are the blind spots that we have? When we do these workshops in firms on innovation, it unlocks unbelievable opportunities. So I think, my last word would be, we all need to challenge ourselves at an individual level in our own mindsets about anything we think we know, any assumptions, anything that we are comfortable with, still need to challenge it. We need to embed that mindset challenge in our teams and create ways and structures for teams, whether it's teams developing new products in R&D or teams building a project, to build in ways for people to constantly challenge within the teamwork and cultural organization at the organizational level, that has to be supported by collaboration, by measuring different kinds of KPIs. Without an ability to truly innovate, we're not going to get where we need to go. Part of innovation is collaboration and collaborating with unlikely partners too, because you got to keep learning and challenging, and you can't do that in an echo chamber with no diversity at all.
Okay, Barbara, you just tired me out.
So
I'm going to play devil's advocate on that because I think there's a bunch of innovators sitting around here. It's the case that people who are change agents inside organizations ultimately get ejected because organizations can only tolerate so much change. And then they say, enough, we need some status quo. We need to dig in and do what we do well for a while and maybe just make that thing better.
I'm not disagreeing with that, but there's a way to do it.
Barbara,
I think it's a good point.
prairie fire, 30 minutes.
Sounds good.
But Barbara and I live like 5 blocks from each other. And
And
that's like
prairie
the
fire
best
is
restaurant in
amazing.
Brookline. So with all of this change that the organizations we work with are facing, like to get off spreadsheets, the most surprising question that we ask when we meet an organization is, how do you know it was used on the last project? No one keeps specs as as-builts. So that's a problem. We always start with all of these moving pieces, the challenges to standardize high-performance material selection. We help identify what are the highest value use cases. Like, let's pick 2. 1, where you could create measurable value. And let's figure out how are we going to measure value. There's probably 7 or 8 metrics, but let's just pick the highest value use cases, start out with a few people and prove that out, and then figure out how to build on it because there's just too many converging needs. People only have the ability to manage a certain amount of things at any given time. My takeaway from all this is that everybody who's still here on this call is amazing that you've stuck it out this long, but everybody's doing something right. Take a look at all the things you're doing and look at what's really starting to go well or could go well, and just focus on that for a little while. Give yourself permission to be like, I can't boil the ocean. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to move the needle a little bit in this direction and measure that and value that, and then figure out what the next steps are.
I'll follow
Thank
that.
you. Go ahead.
Okay, just to reiterate what everyone's saying, I agree completely. Thank you for this opportunity. It's an amazing group of people to be the change. I love to emphasize how simple our tool is because all of our help and onboarding isn't about using our tool. It is about the mindset, walking through with them, pulling their old spec to find what they used and evaluate where they're coming from, right? That is a big component of it. And I guess the other one is, as we, there's been this theme of moving to the masses. I just want to emphasize that the masses want this too. This isn't like we're forcing something on people. People really want change. People really believe in the right thing. And all we're doing is making it easier for them to get there, right? To reach that group isn't about changing minds. It's about inviting them to the table.
I agree. Can say like, well, it's easy to access where like I said before, we're working hard on that. And I want to tackle that comment regarding the Walmart. I think there's something important there. Maybe let's focus a few stories. Kids, PFAS, approachability. Someone already invented the forever chemicals. Let's get rid of them and get a lot of co-benefits. I know HPDC now has a PFAS attestation. That can hit the store. That can grow this group from concerned parents, from like concerned, but not afraid, which is always make the difference between awareness and fear. Let's pick a couple of samples and we'll sneak in some other improvements. I think it's important to have stories that might be very massive expansion of the movement for better materials. With PFAS is bad. The population will understand that it's in the water, it's a proven carcinogen. let's pick a couple of pet peeves and we can insert all our benefits on top if you want to learn more. That can hit, again, that can hit Walmart. Maybe it's a time to hit Walmart as a movement. Might not be perfect. And I'm sometimes concerned about being the perfect data, not being, and then we go to good data that actually can help growing this, make it explode. And I think that's what we need. We need to snowball.
Well, with that, let's all dream of that explosion of opportunity and demand for all the work that everyone is doing. I want to thank all of our ecosystem panelists, everyone who contributed today, and all of our audience. You are the ones, it says there's 82 of you still out there with us. That's amazing. If you believe passionately in this work, that is what makes it happen. Whatever approach you take, whatever you decide to focus on, the most important thing you can do is do one of those things. We have to deal with all of this complexity. We have to pick something, and that is how we're going to move the needle. So again, I want to thank everyone for being here today. We will have the presentations and recordings available as quickly as we can get them processed, cleaned up, and so that you will get a notification of their availability. Thanks to everyone for being here today. With that, we are going to say goodbye for now. Thank you.
See you
Yeah.
next
Thanks, Wendy and Jeff. First class.
Thank you.
Thank you.